Good morning, Sergio.
Good morning, my brother.
All right, we are going to be talking about fun things today.
Yes, sir. We always do.
Yeah. So today, I kind of like to plan the podcast a little bit about what we're going to be talking about, but especially with whoever guest we're having. Sergio, has I would say that people look at you and they think, oh man, he's talented, he's cool. And then they meet you, they're like, wow, he's really cool. He doesn't have any pretentiousness about him or, doesn't think high and mighty of himself just because he's just been on stage and, just did this wonderful show or something like that. So I was thinking of is this something, is the word cool or, just being a cool person or having that suave personality or, is that a character you can develop or you're born with it or both or, what would you advise to somebody who says, you know what, I want to be a little cooler, I want to be able to go into a crowd and just not necessarily talk their ear off, but be cool, be cool as they say, right?
It.
How do you do that? So where would you start?
Well, to answer your first question, I don't think anybody's necessarily born with it. I do think that it can be cultivated. It's definitely something that you need to work on every single day. And I really wouldn't consider myself like cool per se, but what I can say about being cool is that, and this is what I did personally, is I observed other people who I thought were cool. And I think cool comes in many different flavors, right? Someone who can speak very well. I think that's a form of cool. Someone who can walk in a room and just become everybody's friend. I think that's a certain sort of cool, right. Assuming they don't have bad intentions. I think somebody who likes to learn, likes to read or watch videos and learn something.
So how much of it do you think is fashion? How much of it do you think is like a fake persona? Or do you think it's like, is it something you kind of like exuberate, like an energy force, like, oh my God, this person just, their aura is fantastic, right?
Yeah, I think people are smart enough, whether it's a conscious thought or subconscious, that when somebody walks into a room wearing something, say, this scarf and this cardigan, like somebody may think that I'm dressed like an idiot or, oh, that's an ugly scarf, whatever. But I like this. So that's not even a thought. Like if I walk into a room, I'm not thinking, oh, do people like the way I dress?
Right.
So that's not even a little bit. It's not there at all. Right? I like the way I dress. I'm an artist. And in fact, I hope people say that I dress like a goof.
But do you need to be an artist to be cool? That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, not at all.
You're an average guy. Well, not you. Okay, you're obviously been born with certain skills that you've developed further. But if we're talking about the general population, they don't really possess necessarily, all that. They're not necessarily artists. They're not that creative. Maybe in some areas they are, but not something that people consider cool, right?
Right.
So how do you see what I'm saying? Can an average Joe be cool and people want to be around that person? Or do they have to have that extra something?
Yeah, right? it's funny. Something comes to mind. I'm thinking of the sorts of somebody who works, let's just say, at Costco. There are some people at Costco, and I'm sure you can agree with me, that they're scanning your items and you wouldn't necessarily think they're cool. They're just doing their job, whatever. Right. But there are a few people that I've run across at Costco that I'm like, they're cool. The way they dress, the way they're like, hey man, how's your day? Right? Same job, different attitudes, different coolness. Right. So I think coolness stems from maybe a hefty bit of self-image, how they view themselves when they wake up in the morning and look in the mirror.
Right. But doesn't that stem from competence? You know what I mean? Your self-worth, to some extent, you're like attributing it to your abilities. So
yeah, well, like I said in the very beginning, it's definitely something you have to work at. You're just not born cool.
You don't think so?
No, I really don't.
I've seen some kids, man.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, you've seen some kids, but as we get older, something gets messed up on the road in life, right? Something gets messed up, and a lot of people, the vast majority, the general public, I think, they'll put more weight on other people's opinions of them than their own opinion of themselves, and that's going back to self-image. So it's something that needs to be cultivated every single day. Okay, maybe you can be born cool, but how do you keep that up?
Yeah. I think most people would start from the point of they just don't have it, or they're like, you know what? They sometimes feel like there's inhibitions or things that are preventing them from, you know.
Well, and going back to the whole Costco thing, the reason why I mentioned Costco, to finish my story, is Costco may not seem like a cool job. So maybe some people who are working that job, they're like, well, I'm not cool because I work at Costco. Right. But some people, they don't put weight on where they work to be cool, if that makes sense. Right? They're just like, so how would you know, after work, I'm going to go surfing. Or, I woke up early this morning and rode my bike. And I'm working, meeting cool people. And after this, and tomorrow I have an appointment to go skydiving. Like,
so you're saying basically you have to put an effort
100%.
into creating the life you want, and it may not be there now, wherever that place you're in. Let's say you're talking about Costco. Some people love being working at Costco, but you want to be somewhere else, or you want to do something else. But you're saying, you know what, I'm going to get there. It's just this is the process I have to go through.
Yeah, so somebody who's enjoying the journey of life is cool.
How much of it would you attribute to character work?
Oh, dude, everything.
Self-work, in that sense of
everything.
Right.
Everything. Mm-hmm. And especially when you can get to the point where you're just so authentic about it. You're not trying to be cool for anybody or for any situation. You've worked on life, and you've had many experiences. That's why, like you, I mean, you're so well traveled. You've made it and done great things in one of the hardest industries ever. Yeah. Right? That's for sure. So you have so much to base life off of, to live a good life and to not overreact in certain situations, and be able to comfortably and competently travel, deal with people, deal with finances. Now you have a family. I think you're raising your kids. I look up to you. I want to raise my kids like you someday, because I'm not a parent. I have no say in parenting. However, I observe, and some parents are terrible. They are terrible.
What do you see?
Well, I just love how you let your kids run free in your yard, and they can name almost every bush and plant and tree.
Right.
They can tell when a fruit is ripe or not, and they're young children.
Right.
They're young children, and so.
What do you see in parenting styles? What do you see in like things that you don't like? You're like, I don't like this in kids. Behavior.
You can almost tell right off the bat if a parent is basing off their parenting style the way they were parented.
Yeah.
That's just my observation. Again, I'm not a parent, so I don't have a lot of say in the parenting realm.
Yeah, you're talking about the concepts of putting your traumas on your kids.
Absolutely.
Your lacks or things that you think that you need to not compensate overcompensate, or whatever that is. You're putting your systems into.
Exactly.
I get it. Yeah.
So I think it's just taking what is healthy and what would make life better from the experiences of your childhood and dumping all the other crap that may have happened to you. It's not, yeah, you're right. It wasn't your choice to go through certain trauma in childhood, but I believe that it's your responsibility as an adult to do what you have to do to form that energy and redirect it into either helping people or just becoming a better person, focusing on being great, not being happy.
That's a great point. Focus on being great, not being happy.
Right. Because if you focus on being great, the happiness will come.
Right.
Every single time.
Right. It's interesting. It kind of reminds me of my vocal training days when I used to train artists. And, one of the biggest parts of the job is when you're recording an artist, from the moment they enter the door, right? They come into the studio, you might not even notice the energy. You might not even notice how they feel because they could be just like in a certain persona.
Sure.
But when they go to the microphone, when they get on the microphone singing that song,
you can hear
you know
it.
exactly where they are.
Really?
Exactly where they are. And right away you're like, okay, so I know my job now. I know my job from the moment they start recording. We press record and they start opening their mouth. I know what my job is for the next hour, let's say.
And what sort of things do you first look for in that voice? And when you notice it, what's the next step?
So the pros, when they come to the studio, either they take time to get into the zone. It's acting. It's an acting job, right?
Sure.
You have to perform, which means you have to be in a certain mental zone. Whatever that needs to be, that whatever steps you need to be taken to get there, right? Again, most of the people that I work with were not necessarily at that level yet.
Right.
Right? So I need to help them get them. Like, you have to understand that we're spending the next half hour to an hour just getting you in the zone. That's a waste of time. You have to do it ahead of time.
So you have to walk into the studio.
Yes, when you're on the microphone already and the info's on, you're ready. Are you telling me, Ellie, let's go? I'm not even talking. I'm just coming in. So no, you have your. It's like those actors, character actors who are they're in that character. They're not themselves or anybody else. They're that character.
Of course.
They don't break character because they can't. It's going to be it's difficult to come back to it. So you have to get into that character, understand the song you're singing, and get into that character. So when you get on the microphone, we're just looking for magic from then on. We're not trying to match a right character. We're just looking for the magic takes.
Sure.
That we like. So we have 3-4 options. We're like, oh yeah, I like this one. Yeah, but this one has this, boy, that one has that, right? But we're in the zone. We're not completely off.
Sure.
So a lot of it has to do with that. So character embodiment, right? Mm-hmm. And you know how they say about the whole point of me bringing this up is the ability to have self-control, self-discipline. So you can switch on and off whatever you want. So if you want to be in this character, you just switch it, or you need to know what steps to take to get to that state, right? So if you want to have that great aura, that attractive energy, that whatever, it's like, okay, what does that character look like? That person that embodies that character, that has the energy, the aura, the whatever. What do they act like? What do they move like? What do they sound like? The tone, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that applies to even business or any sort of conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're going in to do some sort of business deal and you're face to face with a gentleman who's considering on striking a deal with you, and he's more of just kind of like the sit back. So tell me, how's your day going? You're not going to be like, man, whoa, my day was incredible. He's going to be like, what? Even if that is your
Persona.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, not even if that's truly you, like don't start there. You know, maybe you can build up the conversation so you can do
Absolutely. It's like a game. It's a game,
right.
right?
But
It's,
if he's like, "How's your day?" Be like, "My day is just it's awesome and only getting better." Right? You don't have to just come out of the gate like that. But going back to, I think
Unless you want to.
I think that yeah, I think that's a skill to match the energy. Maybe not exactly. You can be a little above his more mellow energy, but you know to
it
match it a
really
little
does
bit.
depend on what you want to achieve.
I agree.
And at the end of it is like, what is your end goal here? What are you trying to do? And if you're feeling like at times that I would feel if I'm in a meeting, I'm like, okay, energy here is completely like dead. Okay. I need to revive this thing ASAP, or it's just, we're just, I don't like that. Or the energy is way too hyped up. I'm like, calm down. We need to focus.
Right.
Okay. So you kind of like have to determine in your mind where are you trying to get? Is it getting you to the goal you want to get to? That's it. And if your character doesn't get you to that goal, then you need to tweak it. I'm sure some part of that character is fantastic, but maybe other parts are not really working for you.
Right.
They're not getting you to where you want to get to.
I think that's why starting with a joke or some sort of humor is just kind of a blanket safety, and that's why comedians are just so great because they can be serious and they can be funny, but they always have a way of just kind of penetrating any conversation and making everybody feel comfortable. If we can all laugh together, we can all listen together, talk together, whatever it may be, work together.
I agree. A lot of it I also think we touched on this when we spoke earlier about that. Obviously, you can sit and rationalize and figure out, okay, what steps do I need to take to have a better character and work on this and work on that and all these things. But if we talked about fashion, and we specifically talked about physical fitness, health.
Yeah, your physique and
And you said that that's the start. You have to start with that, right? Like, I mean, physical fitness is probably
that's just my personal belief. And if I, like we were talking earlier or the other day, I said you could put on a tracksuit on a really fit dude and he's going to look cool. He's going to make that gray tracksuit that's very simple, and you know, it could be baggy, it could be tight, whatever. It looks good. You could put that same exact tracksuit on a guy who's, let's just say, 6 feet, 300 flabby pounds, and he's just going to look like a slob. So, and similarly, I mean, let's talk about putting on a suit, nice clothes. A fit guy with a good posture is always going to look so much better than a dude who is all blubber in a suit, because you know what's under that suit.
blubber.
Blubber.
Right.
And so at least that's just my observation, and I just really look up to people who do have a certain physique because it tells a lot about that person right off the bat.
Right. There's also a big mental element to it, right?
I believe that
You think clearly.
physical health is directly correlated to mental health.
100%. I'm with you on that one too. When you meet a person, when you meet people all the time, obviously. You know, you meet a person, you're like, okay, this person's, you know, is just cool. What is that thing that you say, they're cool because?
For me, I think it's the first thing I almost look at. I mean, there's many things, but the first thing that comes to mind, rather, is intelligence. And I'm not even talking that you have to be some sort of rocket scientist. For example, my father, I love and respect so much. And he is intelligent in many ways, but he grew up in the mountains. He's a mountain man. So I think his intelligence towards how to survive in the wild, that fascinates me. I think people like you and some other friends, the intelligence applied to building things, fixing things, ripping things out and making something more beautiful.
Right.
I think that is cool.
Right.
That is incredible to me. I think being a strong man for your family is really cool.
How do you get all that from a first? You shake a hand, you do a handshake, and you meet somebody and you say, "Hey, how are you?" What are those things that you would say that's like, you know what? Me and that person really, because there are those people that no matter who they meet, for some reason they have it. They're just, they're cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I heard that about Brad Pitt. I know people who met him, and they're like, what is it about that guy? What is it, right?
Right. Well, and here's the deal too. What's going through my mind is you have the cool people who are quiet. You have the cool people who are loud, but not obnoxiously loud, but just loud because they're confident. And so it's very difficult to pinpoint. I honestly don't think I can answer that sitting here right now. There'd have to be more thought into it. Mm-hmm. But another thing that comes to mind is I believe you should put yourself first in learning and getting healthy, but putting other people before you in a lot of situations. You've already done
that is great advice.
You've already done the work, right? But you go out into the world and have the mindset of like, how can I help this person?
Yeah.
How can I help that person?
Yeah. Be curious about other people.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that is extremely cool.
I agree. How do you help a person who, obviously we naturally are self-absorbed to some extent. How do you break out of that and say, you know what, I actually want to know, because a lot of people are not that interesting per se, unless you can find something interesting in them, and I'm sure you can. I do. Most people I find interesting because I'll ask the right questions to figure out what I'm fascinated in that person.
And the people you don't find interesting, what do they lack, or what do they?
They don't. I like in the right question.
Okay, so everybody's
interesting to me.
I agree.
Everybody's interesting. You have a lack of being able to extract what is interesting about them. Because you see what I mean?
Of course.
So you need to kind of be able to navigate the conversation per se, or I don't know. I've never found anybody not interesting.
Well,
never. Ever.
Yeah.
Just never found anybody not interesting. And people do, because they don't have the patience to listen through the conversation. So if somebody starts talking, they lose them after, they're like, if they keep talking.
Right, or they feel like they're not going to get anything out of this person. Mm-hmm. Maybe they feel more superior.
Or they feel like they're just talking in circles and they're not really... You know how some people can say something in 2 sentences, but they rather say a whole paragraph.
Yeah, that can be me sometimes. I'm trying to keep. I'm serious. I'm trying to keep answers more simple.
It has to be to the point, right? But still, if you figured that out in that person, that person is going to talk about a simple point that could have been portrayed and very quickly. It takes them a long time to do that. Then the next question you ask, you have to be able to know how to ask that question, how to direct it, and possibly even cut them off when necessary in order to move on to the next thing. Right? So you need to understand that this person has no control, but you need to control, because it's a dual conversation. It's not a one-sided conversation that you should have to sit there and listen. No, cut them off and say, but hold on. What about this? And lead the conversation, because that person isn't able to
That's
do
a
that.
skill in itself.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it is. It is. It
Exactly.
reminds me of my wife. My wife, on the topic of, I also think it's the surroundings of what you can bring out of people or not. With my wife, I mean, it's so cute. She wakes up whistling and dancing, and babe, can I cook you eggs? And do you want another cup of coffee? It's very,
Wow.
very loose, very fun, very
She's a
playful.
morning person?
Well, I mean, yeah. When she wakes up, I'm not saying she wakes up like super early and just
No, it's not about what time you wake up. I'm asking in general. When she wakes up, she's like,
yeah. For the most part, I mean, we all have our days,
Yeah,
but for the most part, it's all that. But you put her in a room, or you bring her to an event where you're just talking to all these people, shaking hands. She is very reserved.
right.
And people would trip out if I were to show them 10-second footage of her in the morning. Right? They'd be like, wait, what is she on? Oh, she feels comfortable in her surroundings.
It's interesting. I've heard this podcast about introverts, extroverts, and then the lady, the expert, was talking about there's another character, kind of like most of us are in-betweeners. I forgot the name, the title that she gave to most of us, which are not really truly extroverts or truly introverts, kind of like in the middle. Okay, she says majority of the population is like that. But if that's the case, why don't we just remove those titles and just say, why don't we just, because you can be born an introvert, become an extrovert, born an extrovert, become an introvert, and everything in between. Especially with humans, right? We can choose what we want to become. Right. If that's the case, then forget the titles and just say, you know what? I need to be. Today, I need an hour of being an introvert or, with myself. And an hour tomorrow, I need to be, later on in the evening, I need to be with people because I want that, right? It's not necessarily like just put me in a box of an introvert and sometimes I'm an extrovert. No. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not something. I don't see it that way anymore. As in
So
like
you see it as like a switch that you can flip?
That you can choose to be whatever you want to become. And I think that just like a job, it's like, how they say people love what they're good at. Oh, why do you love it so much? Because you're good at it. Right?
And there's that confidence.
Exactly. And the reason why people say they're introverts or extroverts is because they're good at one or the other. Right? And I'm like, well, why don't you just become good at the other thing? And if you do become good at the other thing, then you will love it.